Well, welcome everybody. I'm very happy to see you here today. I know for some of you it is morning, for some of you it is very early morning, and for some of you it is the afternoon, it's into the evening, I know, looking at the schedule, and it's in the late evening for my friends who are in Kunshan at the moment, who have joined you here today to share their perspective on student life and what is it really like to live in China. And, this is kind of one of the fun sessions, I think. It's what do our students do for fun when they're not in class? So my name is Russell, and I am the Interim Dean of International Enrollment here at DKU. And, this is, I think, one of the most fun sessions because I so often get the question from prospective applicants, from, of course, admitted students, from their parents. What do DKU students do for fun? What do they do when they're not in class? And my response is, honestly, they do what college students do. They hang out, they go to coffee or maybe tea shops, they go out to eat, they take weekend trips. It just so happens that the places they are able to visit on weekends are cities with names like Shanghai, Suzhou, Hangzhou, and many others. So in today's session, you are going to get to hear about the types of opportunities that DKU students have while studying in Kunshan. You're going to get to hear firsthand what they do for fun. You're going to get to learn here what it's like getting around China with maybe limited to no Chinese language skills, certainly when you arrive. You're going to, get to hear like how soon do students feel comfortable going off campus and exploring. You'll get to actually hear about some of the adventures that they have had. And we've got a great group here to share with you. So I am going to uh, stop sharing this slide briefly so that I can bring up another slide. And let me get that so we can do our introductions. So give me one moment here. And let me share this now. I am the slowest person with technology, so you have to bear with me. All right. So I'm going to invite, I hope you all can see the slide, and I'm going to start by inviting Tekla to introduce herself. Tell you a little bit about her.
Thank you, Russell. Hello, everyone. My name is Tekla. I'm a Hungarian student at DKU. I'm currently a third-year student, which makes me a class of 2026. My major is ethics and leadership with tracks in philosophy. And some of my current extracurriculars include being the chair for intercultural engagement, diversity, and inclusion committee under the DKU Student Leaders Board, which is kind of DKU's spin on a student government. I also happen to be a resident assistant under the Residence Life, and I also am a student worker for international enrollment. Really nice to meet you all. You can also see my email and Instagram. Feel free to contact me there or, reach out to me on Instagram if you haven't yet, if you have any questions. But that's it for me for just a quick introduction.
Just for the moment, though, right? All right, let's bring Kendi up, please, Kendi.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Kendi. I'm from Kenya. I'm also class of 26, majoring in computer science. And some of my extracurriculars, like listed here, I'm in the robotics club. I did the AWS deep racer and with the Age Intelligence Lab. It's one of the labs that's in like conjunction with AWS itself. So we get like a lot of stuff from AWS too. I'm also a research assistant to the Future Society Engine, DKU Women in STEM Club. I'm also in the Student Leaders Board, like Tekla. I also am in the Human Computer Interaction Club. I am also co-president of the Association of African and Black Students, and I happen to be an undergrad DA for one of the CS classes too. So yeah, my email is listed there on my Instagram. So if you want to know anything about like class or CS classes or all these clubs or anything else, feel free to like reach out to me.
Thank you. And I know there just wasn't enough room on this slide for all those activities. And let's see, we have Abdullah, please.
Hi guys, thank you so much for joining. I'm Abdullah. I'm from Pakistan. I'm also a rising senior, which is kind of crazy. I'm behavioral science with tracks in neuroscience. As you can see, my extracurriculars mostly are I work on research, mostly STEM-based research, policy-based research. I do sports, mostly the gym essentially. I sometimes play soccer. Oh my God, I said soccer. No, 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 no. I don't want to be American. No, I'm kidding. So I play football, like it should be said. So I play football mostly. And other sports sometimes I swim. And I love to travel and I'll talk about my experiences of travel in China, which has been like amazing. So if you are looking to travel a lot in China, looking for research opportunities within the fields of sciences or like even policy, or just, like getting or if you want to just be a gym bro, I'm happy to help.
All right. Thank you so much. Now, we also have a couple other folks, students, who are in the chat with you. So, in addition to our panelists today, we also have Anastasia Titarova, who is a second year student from Russia. And we have Delphin Kaplan, also a second year, who is from Turkey. So, over the course of this panel, you can pop questions into the chat. Now, if our students who are on the chat can answer them, they will. They will also identify some of those questions that we may want to ask the panelists. So if you have questions for the panelists, they'll be keeping track of those. And then at the end of this panel, we'll go in and pull up some of those questions and ask those as well. But let's go ahead and get started. And so I'm going to stop sharing this so we can actually see who's talking. And so the first question I have for our panelists, and I'm going to pose this to Tekla, and I'll be rotating around so everybody will get a chance to take the first stab at a question, at an answer. But Tekla, for the first question, when you first arrived in Kunshan, what surprised you the most about getting around in China?
I'd say what surprised me the most is how friendly and helpful the people are. In the very beginning, when I first arrived, I had absolutely zero background in Chinese. And especially in a place like Kunshan where English is not so common, it is quite scary to just generally speaking be around, let that be off campus or sometimes on campus, even though most things on campus are in English. But I remember there was this one time I got a phone call, and at the time I can pick it up, I won't understand a single word. But there was like locals, Kunshan locals, who saw me struggling, and they would just come up to me and signal, like, give me the phone. And I was like, okay. And I hand it to them, and they talk to them for me, which is very strange. And it's very difficult to even wrap your mind around just giving your phone to a stranger. But they are really that helpful. They genuinely just, if they see a foreigner just out in the wild struggling with something, you see a bunch of them gather to try and help, pull out translators, and try to resolve things. And this is just in terms of issues, but also, let's say, I found Chinese people really friendly in the sense that they are not afraid to come up and they just ask, like, where are you from, or what's your name? And I think that's just really surprising because especially before coming to China, you hear so many things about China and the people in China, and you're just there like, oh my gosh, like, what am I going into? But it's kind of the opposite, so to say, for at least for me, from what I experienced and kind of warnings I've gotten back home. So yeah, I say one of the most surprising thing was how friendly the people are.
All right, thank you. Kendi? Oh, you're muted.
Okay. So
There.
maybe to add on to that, like the getting around part, I remember I have taken public transport once and my phone died. And the way to pay for the bus is to scan a QR code in your phone. So I just told the driver, like, my phone's dead. And they were like, okay, you can just get on the bus. Let me know where you need to go. I'll drop you off. So that for me was like, okay, because I was genuinely scared. I have no money to pay for the bus, and the bus is like very cheap. It's like less than $50 or something. But then that's the only way I can get home because I cannot call a taxi. It was literally like my last resolve. And the driver was like, okay, fine, it's late. I need to get you home. And they got me to like the nearest bus stop to campus. So that's also like part of like people here are genuinely willing to like help you. And they're very understanding in terms of like, if you don't understand like what metro to get on or like what bus to get on, there's even if you don't like go to customer service, just ask a random person. You're like, I am trying to get to this place. They will help you to get to that place. And it happens everywhere in the hospitals, like outside, with transport, with anything. You walk into a store, you're trying to find something, you don't see it, you can genuinely just ask. So I think the asking is like, yeah, just ask. And if there's like a language barrier, just pull out your phone, get a translator, it's gonna be fine. And chances are the person will pull out a translator before you do. So you'll still be fine regardless.
What is it, like 1 RMB or 2 RMB pretty much for the bus?
Yeah.
Yeah, which I think works out to about what, 15 to 30 cents, I think. So yeah, very, very affordable to your point. Abdullah.
I think yeah, just like I definitely agree with the hospitality part and the just people helping you consistently. But also it was just because I've come from a country that doesn't have like a lot of public transport and we mostly drove around. It was astonishing to see like the level of connectedness that every single city had for public transport. In China, every single city has their own public transport system directly integrated into main lines. So where it sort of works in, I would rather argue it works in like sort of a pyramid structure where you have like the main or like the larger public transports which push you into cities such as air travel or like high-speed trains, but then they sort of like seamlessly merge into these like mini public transport systems in every single city where you get off the station and right there integrated into the station is the metro system for the city. You get through that, you go out, you got bicycle stands all around which are free to use or maybe like 1 RMB, like 15 cents, 30 cents, something like that. And then you got like taxis everywhere, which like it's one app, you call a taxi, it sends a signal to 50 different companies, 50 different drivers, gets you the best option, whoever's willing to take you. And yeah, like I think a lot of people have consistently asked me like, hey, do you drive in China? Do you have a car in China? And I'm like, why would I have a car in China? Because essentially there is no point. The public transport system is excellent. And there's like, like cool perks that you sort of get, which are very unique to China that I haven't found anywhere else. For example, like in Chinese railways, in Chinese high-speed trains, you can actually order food, like mobile order food or like just get some delivery. So like, let's say you're traveling from Shanghai to Beijing and you're like, I don't know why you would need McDonald's, but you somehow decide to get McDonald's and it will ping the next station, the McDonald's at the next station that you're about to arrive at, and it'll prepare your food. The train will stop at the station. They will give the food to the attendants on the train, and they will hand deliver it to you to your seat. I mean, what is going on there? But that's just China, and I think like these are just like cool perks that you have. Very cheap, very affordable. There's like a lot like once like the freshman arrive, we'll introduce you guys to like a lot of apps that are also there, which have like tickets that are even more cheap. I remember I found tickets for like $5 or $10 for intercity travel for flights, which are like last minute tickets that you can get on these apps and stuff. And yeah, just like bring yourself a travel backpack and sheer resilience, and you will enjoy the travel experience a lot.
That's great. That's great. So, you arrive on campus. Candy, I'm going to start with you on this one. How long before you felt comfortable getting off campus, like, going and maybe going into Kunshan and maybe even going beyond, going to Suzhou or going to Shanghai? How long was it before you felt comfortable enough to go off campus?
So I think, unlike other students, I probably spent nearly the entire semester on campus before I got out. I think that was partly because I wouldn't say I was like afraid to go out. I did go out like a couple of times with my friends and everything. It actually took me less than 3 weeks to be outside. But like to actually be like, yeah, I'm gonna do this on my own. I liked going out in groups. But then it was summertime, and then I was like, nah, you can do this on your own. So I'd say after I got to campus, I actually got out like the first night, but like properly like going out by myself and like getting my own trains, making my own appointments, probably took me like the whole semester to get used to it. And in hindsight, I don't know what I was afraid of because it's so easy. You can literally get like a train ticket an hour before you need to get out, and you'll still get it and you'll be fine. So I would say it's not that hard to get around. Get friends or go by yourself. You will be fine regardless.
Yeah, when we moved over there, it's so intimidating. And it's like once you do anything one time, you're like, oh, that was so easy. What was I so
Yeah,
nervous about?
I
You
agree. I
know?
agree.
Abdullah, how about you?
Yeah, circumstances were pretty different for me. I arrived, so all of us like sort of arrived. Actually, not all of us. I think it was me and a bunch of other students who arrived earlier. When like China was sort of transitioning into the COVID system and like sort of out of it. So I actually arrived directly in Beijing because that was the only direct flight I could find from my home country, and then I had to just like solo travel all the way from Beijing to Shanghai. So that was like a complete different experience. But even after like arriving on campus, I think we stayed on campus partly for maximum like 3 weeks because we were having final exams and stuff. And then we took perhaps the best trip of our lives, which was we had winter break roll around, and then we did 3 cities in 20 days, essentially. Touring Shanghai, touring Suzhou, and I'm not sure we went to Wuxi. No, we didn't go to Wuxi, but like Suzhou, Shanghai, and Hangzhou. We did these 3 cities in 20 days. And it was a group trip actually, but it was an amazing trip, and that like helps you like just open up the gateway for us. And on those trips too, like we roamed around in groups, but there were solo days that we did where everyone sort of went around on their own. And yeah, you realize it's very surprisingly easy. And the one of the best things about this was that this was the point where you actually learned more Chinese than you would just do perhaps if you just stuck to the curriculum in class. So yeah, like definitely travel like amped up all of our Chinese to a huge level where we were like, oh, like this is the colloquial real Chinese that is spoken in modern China today compared to what we are just studying in the textbook. Not that the textbooks and the class didn't help, they were the base, but to polish those skills, travel was the thing that we needed.
Thank you. Tekla?
So for me, when I first arrived to campus, I super clearly remember that I haven't even been here for an hour, and some of my friends, including like my roommates, have already were like, oh my gosh, let's go off campus. I want you to see what else is there. So I think it really helped me to have friends around in the beginning. Especially someone who speaks fluent Chinese was like very much like someone who I could rely on. Um, and I happened to also go with Abdullah on the trip that he mentioned, where we did have one friend who spoke fluent Chinese, which I think made the whole trip much more comfortable. Even on our solo days, I was less afraid now just because I've already seen how things work by a local, so to say, or someone who can understand it properly. But for reference, with the trip Abdullah mentioned of like 20 days of 3 cities, we did that less than 2 months of being in China, which is insane. It's not something you just say like, oh, let me pack up, so to say, a bag and just go out for 20 days into the world that I don't know. But I'd say just echoing what Kendi and Abdullah mentioned, it is gonna be really quick that you feel like, oh, you can get around, especially once you experience the hospitality of Chinese people. You will kind of be like invincible in that sense. Like you'll just be ready to go. It doesn't matter where you need to go, what challenges you may face, you'll just go. So yeah, that's my answer, so to say.
All right. All right. So this is kind of at the, you know, again, that frequently asked question. Abdul, I'm going to start with you. Day to day, if a student decides, they've got some free time, maybe they're with their friends, what do you guys go do? Where do you go hang out? Just kind of give a glimpse into that just day to day free time. What are you doing, Abdullah?
Yeah, so I'm gonna just like divide it sort of into two parts, which is like the academic days and then like the weekends when you're sort of free. Mostly during the days, you're pretty busy with classes, so you're just going around and whatnot. So mostly, I think you're involved in on-campus activities. You get a free time. If it's summertime and like if the temperature is really nice, you sort of sit outside with your friends, maybe go around here. If there's an event going on, a lot of clubs are having events consistently. You go there. The residence life department hosts events. You can go there. So day to day is like that, and then you just like you find your friends, you hang out, you have food together, and that's mostly like Monday to Thursday. It's the weekend that actually changes things, and that honestly really depends on you as to what kind of a person you are and what you really prefer. It's from all the way to like the chaos of like, hey, I want to like go out, I want to party and all of that, to completely like, hey, I just want to like be in a completely silent environment, maybe have some small talk or relax and do something. So there's options from like, hey, I can travel to Shanghai or Suzhou, maybe go to a party, like go to like bars and stuff, all of that. That's if that's for you, great. There's also like, hey, I just want to travel these cities. I want to try their food. Shanghai metropolitan city, you will find excellent food from all around the world. If you're like, hey, like I just want to like, take it slow, cycle around Kunshan, cycle around Shanghai, you can do that. I want to cook. You have kitchens, you can cook with your friends, cook on your own, whatever you want. If you are more of a reader, you got excellent libraries in Shanghai, in Suzhou, in Kunshan, like really amazing, cute places like by the lake, by the side of the pond, in ancient towns, and like amazing areas where you can just like, sit and read and talk, enjoy coffee and whatnot. Um, yeah, like the opportunities are endless. Like if I start listing them right now, like it'll just take the entire call. So yeah, it really depends on you. Personally, for me, on a weekend, I like to take it easy, relax, cook. I love to cook. Cook with my friends, good, have some good food. Go around Kunshan maybe, or if I'm feeling like more like I want to explore it out there, I just go to Shanghai and I just like wander around the city, because as much as I've been to Shanghai, there is no such thing as enough of Shanghai. You just keep exploring and you keep finding new stuff. Um, and I've got some other plans for senior year, which is like quick trips I'll take over the weekend, different city, come back, different city, come back. But that's only senior year, guys, not right now.
All right, thanks. Tekla?
Um, I'd say for me, it depends. So I'll break it down into three parts rather than two, which will be personal time, friends time, and other, so to say. So I'll start with the other because there's so many opportunities at DKU to further develop yourself academically or professionally speaking, from going to conferences nearby to just going on field trips for different like classes or clubs. Um, I'd say those happen maybe once or twice a month for me. But for example, a couple of weeks ago, I went to University of Nottingham, Ningbo, China for a conference where I managed to meet a lot of friends from other joint venture schools in China, out of which, and transitioning into my second point of friends, it's important to note that you can also hang out with not just DKU friends during the weekend. And I'd say most DKU students have friends from other places in China or like other joint venture schools. And for example, just this weekend, I had a couple like other friends from other joint venture schools come to Kunshan, and we've just been exploring Kunshan, Suzhou, and Wuxi of like what is the region, like what can be offered with the region. But generally speaking, I try to make sure to go off campus at least one day in the weekend, even if it's just going to a nearby like commercial street called like Dayu Bay, even if it's just for a meal or just for a walk. But I also have my personal time, which, sometimes you just may want to sit inside your room, read a good book, or just generally speaking, walk around campus, lay out in the sun. Finally, spring has arrived to campus, so the weather is great. But yeah, I'd say there's a lot of opportunities, just echoing what Abdullah said, but also pointing out that there's so many other things you can do of professional, academically, or even just beyond DKU.
Awesome. Kendi?
Yeah, so if it's probably weekdays, I only have like a couple minutes or like an hour, I would go walk the whole trail along the lake in Dayube, especially at night. It's so pretty with the lights on and everything. So Dayube, #1 spot. If you need to like just sit in the sun, grab a meal, get boba, there's everything in Dayube, or like a quick shopping stop in Dayube. But also, like they said, on weekends, you can have like conferences. There's so many conferences in Shanghai. It doesn't have to be like academic or something, but there's also like research going on. Like you can attend those conferences. There's art galleries that's open. You have orchestras performing. You have ballet. Literally anything you can think of. There's performances every other time in Shanghai. And then the other thing I have come to notice is, at least myself, I am in like group chats of like Africans in Shanghai or like Kenyan students in China and stuff like that. And they host events, like embassies also host events. You can go join those events. There's also like Career Services also holds like field trips to companies like Microsoft, Tesla, PwC, and other companies. So you can also like sign up for one of those field trips if like you're interested in the company or something like that. And if you're up to it, you can also like travel to a different country because it's really cheap to travel Asia from within Asia. So it's common to find students like fly out on Thursday night or like Friday morning, come back on Sunday evening, be in class on Monday. But yeah, sometimes you just also have too much homework or math going on. You spend the weekend studying math from Friday to Sunday or working on your research. So it just depends on like what your weekend looks like. But there's so many options. You can also play games with your friends, find an empty room in CCT anywhere on campus, watch movies. There's also like a lot of events with like the jazz club playing music, the school orchestra, the school choir. You have like dance events, like at least now with the Arts and Music Festival, we have like dance showcases both on campus and sometimes they go dancing in the mall nearby. So there's a lot to do. And Kunshan, or China in general, is very scenic in the sense of like every city has its own aesthetic, I would say. So it's also nice to like go to other cities, just see like the aesthetic of the city and just, I don't know, blend in with the nature or something. So there's a lot to do depending on what you want to do. There's also cat cafes if you like cats, and cat libraries or bookshops. There's that too. I don't like cats, but yeah, there's that.
You're talking about feline cats, right? Um, uh, so let's see. My next question is, I don't, can you give insight, Tekla? I'm going to start with you. And I think you might have already shared this first part, but what was your Mandarin level, right? When you arrived, and then just getting around, right? Just taking the bus, the metro, the high-speed train. Just like how easy was it to kind of learn that system? And, because that is a big concern I think people have. Like, am I going to be able to get around? Will I be able to navigate, buying a ticket and those kinds of things? So maybe a real practical perspective. What was your Mandarin level? And then how easy was it to just use all of these ways to get around?
So when I first arrived, my Mandarin level was absolute zero. Like not even a ni hao was coming out of my mouth. But I'd say, as I mentioned previously, having Chinese friends were kind of like my support pillars. Especially at the time, a lot of the Chinese apps did not have an English function, which if you just see Chinese characters, it's terrifying. Like you cannot make sense of this. Nowadays, however, it's important to note that most of the apps have an English function or like an English version at least, which makes life so much easier. But at the time, with just the Chinese, even calling a taxi was impossible because you would need to search your location or destination in Chinese. How was I supposed to do that with no Chinese experience? I don't know. That's why when I had, like, not just had, when Chinese friends as a whole are super helpful in the beginning, in the sense that they can help you navigate, for example, how to call a taxi. The first couple of times they could even just call it themselves. But I remember the first time I took a taxi by myself. And when you get into the taxi here, the way you verify that it is you is that you say the last 4 digits of your phone number. Now, my last 4 digits includes a 0. And even when I learned how to count from 1 to 10, I don't know how to say 0. So I would face challenges like this when when I was traveling alone too. But I'd say everyone is creative enough, especially in, so to say, desperate moments. Um, so, just simply showing a 0 or typing a 0 can help and help. Like you can resolve it alone. As for public transportation, at the time, all like public transportation information was also in Chinese, but it was one of those things that once you've seen how it works, you could navigate it easily. And public transportation was in Chinese on the app, but they have it in all like metro and bus stations that they write out the English name or at least the pinyin version of the characters, which makes it much more helpful. But yeah, I'd say that's a quick answer from me.
Yeah, I love the fact it took me a while, but as soon as you see that little English button in the metro and you just hit English on that, buying your ticket, it just makes life so easy. Abdullah.
Yeah, like straight up, like relating to the sentiment that Tekla brought in. So my Chinese was not 0. My Chinese was absolutely in the negatives because the words that I knew, I was pronouncing it wrong too. So I would talk and they'd be like, what? I'm like, no, I'm saying it right. And they'll be like, no, you're not. So I knew 3 things. I just knew like how to say hello and thank you when I arrived in China. And that was something I Googled while on the airport because I was like, at least I should know that. And when I got there, I wanted to like learn how to like, not talk to people and stop them in talking to me in Chinese. So I learned the phrase like, I wanted to say like, hey, I don't speak Chinese, but I could not, that was like too hard on the translation app. So I just said, I am not Chinese. So like anytime they looked at me, they were like, start speaking Chinese. I was like, I'm not Chinese. They look at me and be like, yeah, no, bro, like, come on. So like we started a journey like that. And I kid you not, like, I think the first month there, my phone was just filled with screenshots that I was like, oh, screenshot, translate. Okay. Oh, okay. And then put it back. Just completely filled with it. My brain was going at like it was just forming new connections and like just all over the place trying to make sense of the world around me. I had like these little quirks such as, hey, like, oh, okay, the system to get this right is to screenshot it, put it back, and then put it again, and you'll get it. And then with apps, it was like, oh, the brighter the button, the better it is to click it. If the button is like white and shallow, yeah, that means cancel or something. But yellow and bright, yeah, you click that and you go forward. I don't know if I signed any contracts that I might just like, take me away for later, but it was an experience. And that was like a good experience to have because now it's just, I know I can read it in Chinese. I know it in Chinese. I know what exactly these apps are doing. But now, since you guys will arrive, it'll actually be much easier because most apps have been like made like they have their international versions. You just have English everywhere. But that was really good for me to like get a solid grasp on not only like life in China, but also the language itself, which was really, really excellent. And like I mentioned previously, yeah, these uncomfortable experiences will lead to the resistance that requires your brain to actually push itself to learn the new things, just like any other thing ever that you've learned.
Great. Thank you. Kendi.
So unlike both of them, I already had a semester of Chinese in when I got here. So I knew what to say to the taxi driver to tell them where I was, or if I'm in like the middle of town in between buildings, I at least knew how to describe like where I am in relations to like, oh, I see this building, or I see the name of this road, or this is what I'm wearing. So at least I had that. With public transportation, I would say like the buses and the metro, it helps to have like a map app that tracks where you go and like it's gonna vibrate like, oh, when you get to the station, do this. I mean, it was in Chinese, but it also helps that like it has an English name attached to like the Chinese name, or even if it doesn't, it's gonna tell you go 6 stops. And then the other thing is on the metro, they announce we are going to this stop. They'll announce it both in Chinese and in English. So at least if you're in the metro, you know, oh, my next stop, not this one or that one. And also like the metro has like a tracking thingy on the side. It shows, oh, I'm moving from this stop to the other stop. So I would say once you get on the metro, as long as you're on the right metro, you will get where you're going. And the apps will also tell you what to do. With buses, I was like, okay, I see what people are doing. Everyone's scanning something on Alipay, so I'll scan it. then you realize, oh my God, there's a different code for the metro, there's a different code for the bus. You go to a different city, it's gonna change locations for you. So it's a matter of like just see what people are doing and imitate that, and you'll get by.
Okay. So yeah, I think let me do a quick follow-up to this one. And this just, learning Mandarin. Uh, how did that go? When did you feel like you had enough Mandarin to, give directions, to feel like you could be just a little more helpful and engaged in navigating your own, little journeys off campus? And Tekla, I'm going to come back to you.
So I'd say for me, the earliest I felt like, oh, okay, I can survive alone is by the end of our first semester. But by the point that I can say I was more than comfortable is by the end of our first year. I think generally DKU does a great job with teaching Chinese, not by teaching categories, like let's say today we learn colors, next day we learn animals, but rather through application of like, we would have a homework like go off campus and order yourself a bubble tea, or record yourself talking to the taxi driver, which requires you to actually use Chinese off campus in a real life setting. And by the end of the first year is when I would say, yes, I am comfortable. Since then, I've actively been either taking classes or putting my personal efforts into learning Chinese. And now I'm able to speak in Chinese with my Chinese friends. I can comfortably get around and potentially even take classes in Chinese, like I have in the past at Duke, for example. I've taken a whole marketing class taught fully in Chinese with just 2 years, right? So it's a very quick learning process, especially because you are in an environment that speaks Chinese as soon as you step foot off of campus. So you'll just start picking it up very quickly. So yeah, that's just a little side note on my answer.
Super helpful. Kendi, how about you?
So this is probably a biased answer, but learning Chinese was very easy for me, probably because I already speak many other languages. So it was just adding one more to those. It was very easy, especially with the writing. I would say at first, writing characters looks very intimidating, but it actually is not. Once you get into the flow of recognizing patterns and radicals and stuff like that, it does get easier and it gets even better with time. And I would say, I think I was pretty comfortable with my Chinese even by the time like I was getting here with my one semester of 100 level Chinese. So for me, it was more like, yeah, go out, speak to like drivers, and they have the best stories, I would say. My best interactions here, speaking Chinese, have been with taxi drivers. And it will kind of surprise you how much you know the more you talk to them, because you'll realize how fast you have learned the language or like the slang or informal language out here. But like talking to waitresses, ordering your food, talking to taxi drivers, talking to aunties on the street, because the aunties will come up to you and say hi and ask you questions. And I think the most interesting taxi ride I have had so far was when I went to the Shanghai Grand Prix for the Formula One last year. It was like a 2 hour ride, and the whole time we talked about where you're from. Oh, you're from here? I'm not from here. Do you like the food? Do you not? And we went into politics so fast and talking about climate change. I didn't even know I had the language for that until I had the taxi ride. So I think it's a great learning experience. And the more you put yourself out there, the more you will learn. And the more friends you make on campus, the more time you spend also like talking to your Chinese professor or like other Chinese students, it does help. And also the Center for Teaching and Learning hosts like a Chinese lunch table. Basically, you go have lunch with other people, speak Chinese. Some will be really good, and you'll be there with your zero level starting Chinese, and it does feel intimidating, but it's actually not. This is like you collecting vocabulary and waiting for when you have to use it in a conversation about climate change. So I would say the more you put yourself out there and like the more intentional you are about like learning Chinese, the less of a chore or a class it becomes. And it just it's fun. It's nice to like go out there by yourself or like with your friends and just joke around with people, like say hi, go window shopping and like comment about clothes and know your size and stuff like that. It's an interesting thing to do. And Chinese people be like, oh my God, the Chinese is so good. Even if you say hi, they'll be like, wow, you speak like good Chinese. And like, I didn't know foreigners speak Chinese and stuff like that. People will encourage you to like speak more by like telling you things like that. So it's also not gonna feel awkward, like, oh wow, like my Chinese is bad. It doesn't matter. And most times, even if like you get the tones wrong, they know what you're trying to say. So they'll actively help you. So I would say learning Chinese is fun and try like the best as you can to like learn outside of class than like in class. Because outside class is like the actual experience.
I love that you highlighted taxi drivers because boy, is that the truth. They get so excited to learn about you. They just want to learn about you. Abdullah.
Yeah, similar experiences. I think the advice that I would have is just to embrace the pain, because the first few months you're like, what is going on? Like you have no clue. And like you are suffering at rates to comprehend something that you're like, I probably should not do this. And that's the like the two contrasting perspectives that we always have among students, is that they're like, hey, why do I need to learn this? Like, oh, if I didn't have to learn this. And then the other one is like, whoa, that is something that I want to learn. Um, so yeah, like initially, like it'll be very painful being like, okay, what is this? Why does it not make sense to me? Why cannot I speak it? And stuff like that. But that's the thing, like just keep speaking horrible Chinese until that point where you have that moment in your brain and like you're like, whoa, no, no, no. I've heard this said like this a million times. That's probably the right thing. And you say that, and then someone else is like, whoa, that's right. And they respond to you, and you're like, whoa, what I said makes sense. And then you're like, whoa, wait, let me try something else. And then you do that, and they reply back. And then once you start to hear and comprehend what they're saying too, that changes everything. So, like I said, I started with three phrases. My One of my peak conversations was also with a taxi driver. I was going to Shanghai. There was this one guy who was driving all the way from Chengdu. So I took a pool taxi with him. He picked me up, and it was a 1 hour, 30-minute drive to Shanghai. It was a pretty busy day that day. And that guy turned out to be one of the engineers who was working on the national space program for China. And we talked in 1 hour for 1 hour, 30 minutes, completely in Chinese about China's space program and about other stuff. And the output of that was made a great friend, learned a lot about Chinese space program. It was an amazing conversation, practiced my Chinese, but also he didn't let me pay for the ride. So that's just a side perk. So that was pretty amazing, honestly. And yeah, that honestly just helps. And it is always like really encouraging when people like sort of see your Chinese, like they interact with you, and it comes second nature to you, honestly. It takes time, but just the fact that you're in China, you're learning it, you're applying it, there's no better way. And even today, when I tell people that, hey, like I learned it in 2 years, and they're like, no, like 2 years can't be that. 2 years in this good, and 2 years in this and that, which is like amazing. So yeah, it'll be a journey. It'll be a lot of pain, but then it'll be a lot of like fruitful stuff.
I don't think Kendi's agreeing with you on the pain part, but I think the point is there's a wide variety, right, of experiences and people have definitely different aptitudes for languages, and some people have great ears for tonal languages. I think there's several variables there, right? But I think the one theme here obviously is if you put the effort in, you're going to improve. And just getting that confidence and being in a culture that encourages you, right? They encourage you. They don't, to speak the language, and you just feel so good when you use a word and you're understood, right? And when you're able to communicate. Just quickly, so shorter answers on only this topic, but food, right? Food in China, again, kind of people have different not aptitudes, but palates and, different levels of adventure eating. So I'm going to start with Kendi on this one. Just tell me about what was it like transitioning to Chinese food, and kind of when you go out, what are the experiences like when you go out to eat, Kendi?
Um, first I'd say is you know what you're allergic to, so try find out if you're allergic to something before you eat it. But if so, I would say first is like at least try to know the Chinese names of things you're allergic to. Even if you're gonna pronounce them wrong, it's fine. But it's gonna help you in case you go somewhere and then yeah, they have exactly what you're allergic to in your food. But then I would say I am not a picky eater, except I don't like seafood. So I am down for like a challenge, but I wouldn't say it was much of a transition for me because to some extent, Chinese food is almost close to food we would make back home, with a few exceptions and stuff like that. So it wasn't really hard for me. And when I go out, I I like to eat Chinese food. I would go into a random noodle place and just ask for a type of noodles I have not seen anywhere else because the name looks interesting. So I would say going out, there's a lot of like Chinese restaurants, French restaurants, Italian. There's a lot of cuisine, especially in Shanghai. And you can find literally almost everything. And if you don't want to eat out, you can make your own food. There's grocery stores everywhere. And if you don't want to go out, you can get it delivered on campus, same day, couple hours actually. So you can make your own food, you can go out, find whatever you want to find. And you can also like eat on campus. So the dining hall is 3 floors with Chinese food, Western food, and there's also a halal section. So I would say there's choice in what you want to eat. If you don't want to eat on campus, feel free to like order food from other restaurants, from a fast food place. That's generally up to you. But I would say there's a lot of food options to like go around. And there's also options for like vegetarian people. You can also like get a salad on campus or order something from outside. So I would say in terms of food, it's an actual experience too. Chinese food is very different and very diverse depending on where you are to begin with. So you go to a different city, you'll find they make food in a certain way. You go somewhere else, it's made differently. So it's also a matter of taste, I would say. But I think there's a lot of food options, a lot of variety, and if you're down for it, you will have like a good experience of both Chinese food and like other cuisines.
Thank you. Abdullah, how about you?
I think I'll start off with the communal question of like, it's 1 a.m. You are craving something amazing to eat. There's exactly one place everyone will go. And I know for a fact, every single one of us is saying that place right now. I would love them to comment it in the place and in the chat box. Yep, exactly. Xinjiang food. Perhaps the best discovery of my life. Perhaps the best thing that has happened to us as internationals in China. Cheap halal barbecue with the most amazing taste there is. That's my go-to thing. Followed by Lanzhou's spicy noodles, Sichuan food, and whatnot. Like Kendi said, the variety is insane. Metropolitan places have amazing Western style Chinese food, like already told. But then you got like, because we're next to Shanghai, you got all sorts of food that there is from around the world. I have dietary restrictions, so I eat halal food mostly, but that's also ample to find everywhere. Like there's not a problem that I've had. But then I also like cook alongside it. So with this amalgamation of like cooking, amazing Chinese food, ethnic Chinese food, and then like, Western style Chinese food, and like Chinese style Western food, it's a lot. You wouldn't have a problem with food. But yeah, like important points to note as well, like know your allergies and stuff. Don't test it and then realize that it's an allergy. Just make sure that you have that. But yeah, you will have a good time with the food, definitely.
Thank you. Tekla?
So for me, in the very beginning, I'll be honest, I struggled with the taste. I could not wrap my mind around Chinese food. So I stuck to very plain Chinese food, so to say something that I could still kind of comprehend of what is it, what's in it, what kind of spices, and so forth. So in my first 2 years, I was much more leaning towards trying to find local Western food, including restaurants very nearby. I mean, like less than 5 minute walk away from campus with really good pizza, really good pasta, or just fried chicken. But after I came back from the US, I don't know what happened. I don't know what was the switch, But now I am obsessed with Chinese food to an extent where if I have the option to choose between Western and Chinese, I'll probably choose the Chinese food. Um, as I said, don't know what happened. I think I may have just gotten accustomed to it, or maybe just my palate grew. But now it's less foreign as well. But with that being said, of course, I still get cravings for my own food. Let that be either with just Western food or my like country's food, like Hungarian food, which sadly there are no Hungarian restaurants nearby. So I usually cook for myself. There are applications that are where you can order groceries that are imported from Europe specifically, which makes it much more easier for me to find familiar things, especially like, for example, sour cream or any other dairy products that, of course, China still has, but it's kind of reassuring to see brands you've seen back home. So in that sense, I also nowadays cook quite often, but if I ever go outside, then I'll probably start eating Chinese food.
All right, so I'm going to ask one more question, and then we'll kind of have parting words. But the last question is, and I think you guys kind of touched on it earlier, what are some of the fun, cool places that you have visited as a student, right? Taking advantage of being in China, taking advantage of being in the U.S. Abdul, I'm going to start with you. I know you are somebody who seizes opportunities to travel. So maybe just share, briefly, what are some of the places you've been to that you've really enjoyed?
DKU. No. I've been to 8 cities in China. All have their uniqueness and their vastness. I've been to 8 cities. Of course, the metropolitan cities: Shanghai, Guangzhou, Beijing, Hangzhou, Nanjing, and then you got smaller cities around like Suzhou, Wuxi, and all of those areas. I think the Great Wall was, of course, an amazing experience, like one of the wonders of the world. And this one auntie who beat me to the entire thing while I was out of breath, she was climbing like it was nothing in -6 weather. That was an experience. One of the places that I love in Shanghai is this rooftop bar in Ritz-Carlton, where we always snuck in, lying to them that we were residents of the hotel, but we were not. So that was an experience where I met this one Japanese Chinese man, which was very interesting because read about Japanese Chinese history. But then I talked to him in Chinese, and he said, "You should talk to my uncle. He'll appreciate your Chinese." And then I talked to his uncle, who didn't like speaking a lot of Chinese. And I was like, why? Because he had lived in Paris for 54 years of his life. And then I spoke one French word with him, and that's all I knew. And then I brought one of my friends in to speak more French with him, which was a unique experience on a rooftop, like I think on the 88th floor or something. That was an experience. Hangzhou, we were in the political residence of Mao Zedong. We went up there. That was a completely different experience. In Nanjing, I was among the ancient relics of the Confucianist school, where I saw their uniforms, their transcript, their class lectures, and more. Walking the Nanjing Wall to see the entire city. In Guangzhou, a city that is Chinese city, but that is filled with a huge diaspora from foreigners. At one point, I was sitting in Guangzhou in an Arab restaurant with Arabs all around me, completely just surrounded by the Arabic language. And it took me some time to realize that I was actually in China, not in an Arab country. Similar stuff in Wuxi, where like the cherry blossoms are absolutely stunning and amazing. What else? Where else have I been?
How about outside of China?
Outside of China, yeah. To get there, I think this was like the coolest part of my journey. But like when I pre-college, I used to imagine myself like, hey, like I want to like travel, just go around the world and whatnot. So you know how there is around the world in 80 days? I did almost around the world in 14 days, in 16 days. Not 80 days, I beat that, but because of airplanes, thank you. So my journey essentially, this is a journey that I sort of took was because of like when I was transitioning to Duke. I'm currently at Duke, by the way, in Durham, North Carolina. So I left Shanghai on December 16th. And I was taking a friend, I was visiting my home country and then going to the US. I left Shanghai on December 16th. I arrived in Guangzhou City on December 16th, same day. I stayed there in Guangzhou City for 2 days, met some friends and whatnot. And then I left Guangzhou City on 18th of December. I arrived in Lahore, Pakistan on 19th of December, stayed there with family, left Lahore on 29th of December. Arrived in Dubai on 29th, left Dubai on 30th, went to Boston, Massachusetts on the 30th. I arrived on Boston, Massachusetts on the 29th again, like skipped a day because going past in time. I stayed there with a friend I stayed there with a friend and his family for 2 days. We drove up then to New Hampshire for skiing. We came back to Boston, Massachusetts. Then on 31st, I went to Baltimore, Maryland. Then on the 1st, I arrived at Duke in Durham, North Carolina. Uh, so that was an experience where I'm like, whoa, like I just did all of that in 14 days. And I think that's a blessing. That's a privilege to have. And other than that, yeah, in America, I've been to Boston, I've been to New Hampshire, I've been to Durham area, North Carolina, Raleigh area. I'm soon probably going to be visiting New York once the semester is over, go around DC area and more. But yeah, it's been splendid, honestly. 2 countries, 2 continents, infinite amount of privilege, honestly, and like just a lot of blessings. And that is one part of like the DKU experience, honestly, the travel part of it. And I plan to like travel more in China once I go back in fall. But yeah, that's my adventures. Thank you.
I'm exhausted. Tekla?
So for me, within China, I did quite a bit of traveling, of course, nearby cities, Suzhou, Wuxi, Shanghai, Hangzhou. But I also went quite further. I've been to Beijing, I've been to Hainan Island, and I've also went to Taizhou for a solo trip, actually. Um, but all of them were pretty fun, quite easy to navigate. Most of them I either did with family or with friends, usually including someone who spoke fluent Mandarin, except for my solo trip, of course, which I did in the end of my second year. That's when I was really at the point of like, I can go to a new city in China, which is quite far away from DKU. I can go like, figure everything out from getting the hotel and everything right then and there. Just, being spontaneous on a trip, just, going alone. So I'd say that was also a big achievement of mine. But I loved all of these trips. Traveling in China is quite cheap, including like transportation, let that be flights or the high-speed train. Yeah, and then as for outside of China, I've already been to Malaysia, Singapore, South Korea, and Japan. My most recent trip, which was about a month ago, was to South Korea and Japan, where I did 12 days of solo traveling, and I went to over 5 cities. And I made a lot of friends there as well. I actually got pretty good deals. I think it's important to note with traveling that, especially when you hear like, oh my gosh, they're going to so many places, that this must cost a lot. But it doesn't necessarily, especially if you know where to find deals, if you know when to get, like how to get coupons and so forth. So for example, when I was on my trip in South Korea and Japan, I managed to get a flight on a Chinese app from Jeju Island to Seoul for like not even $13 USD. So I think it's important to know that it is possible to travel cheap. You just need to be comfortable with traveling cheap. And accommodations in China can be as cheap as like 80 to 100 RMB a night. And like, for example, just going to Shanghai, which is already a travel in itself, let's be clear. Shanghai can also be less than like $3 a train ticket. So it's not like life-changing. You just need to be comfortable with traveling cheap. I remember there was this one time, me and a friend, we said, let's go on a budget trip to Suzhou, where we set our daily budget for 40 RMB, which is what? Not even $6 for an entire day of traveling, sightseeing, and food. And we managed to do it. It's just you need to have the right mindset if you want to travel cheap. And I'd say generally being so close to Shanghai, it's a really good base for everyone to travel, not just in China, but also beyond China.
And just to give perspective on that, when you mentioned 80 to 100 RMB a night, that's like $12 to $15, US, and 40 RMB a day is about $6. And we do have a lot of students who are on budget. So I think I've seen a lot of the comments coming through. I think it's important to note that one, and you made the point very clear, Tekla, that you just have to be ready to travel on a budget, right? And to travel cheaply. But one of the nice things is you got a lot of classmates who've been doing it before you, so you can get a lot of good tips on how to make the most of a limited budget. Kendi, any final thoughts on travel for you?
Yeah, I think it's pretty much the same thing. Travel within China is cheap. And I think also like getting around Asia, it's very cheap and convenient from here because it's normal to like see students take a weekend trip to Bali or to somewhere in Thailand, go to Malaysia. Plus, countries around here also are very cheap in the sense of that you can go to Malaysia and find prices comparable or even cheaper to the ones that you have in China. So your very budget trip even becomes less expensive, I would say. But I would also say, because someone asked like how you manage to like travel as a student, I would say personally, I save for my trips. If I feel like I want to make like a big trip, I would save for a trip. Or you have like a student worker job, for example, I'm working as a teaching assistant, then I get paid. At the end of the month, you get good money, you can take a budget trip on. So if you don't want to rely on your parents for like money every time you travel, it's also very possible because there's different options. Then the other thing I would say is also having friends. So if you have like Chinese friends, for example, they can invite you to like their homes during holidays and you can also travel with them. So you don't have to feel like if I don't have money and everyone's traveling, then what do I do? I think it's a common thing mostly for like international students to have Chinese students and you go visit their hometowns when they go on holidays or even travel with them when they take a family trip, depending on like the family. So there's that. And also the other thing is you get to make friends from all over the world. So the other opportunity is to visit countries and be hosted by your friends. So that's also like another possibility. And that makes your trip even cheaper. And at Duke, I would say I did not get around the US much while I was at Duke. I was busy with my math classes, but I did do a lot of like restaurant hopping around like Durham, Raleigh, Charlotte, I would say. It was a good experience. And within China, I am probably very partial to Wuxi and Hangzhou because with Hangzhou, I feel like there's how do I say this? I mean, the DeepSeek offices are in Hangzhou, which is why because all the technology is suddenly moving to this one place, and it's interesting to see for me personally. And then with Wuxi, I like it because it feels like a small, cozy village. I would say there's not much noise, not much going around. It's really nice and quiet, so I like it there. Outside of China, went on a trip with Tekla and two other friends to Malaysia and Singapore all in the same week. And it was very cheap, I would say. So the other thing is travel with friends, get hotel rooms together. If you want to get like a minivan or something, traveling with friends also makes it cheap compared to like going out on your own.
Got me all excited. There is so much to see. And I think everybody knows the high-speed train system in China is phenomenal. It's affordable, it's on time, it's comfortable, and really takes such a large country and makes it feel a little smaller because it is accessible. All right, so the last question. I know we've run a little late, and I'm so grateful for those of you who are staying up, including a couple of our panelists and those on the chat. Thank you so much. I know we're getting late. So just the final question. So we know that many of you in attendance, we know that many who will review and watch this recording later are weighing your options. And moving to China is a big step. So given where, you've all, as panelists, you've all been where our attendees are now. So I'd like to ask our panelists to share, why did they decide to go on this journey? Abdullah, I'm going to start with you.
I love this question because I was reflecting on this today because I came across something. It was yesterday, actually. I came across something And that sort of was like the perfect response to what my, like, a lot of people questioned me about. In Pakistan, the general trend is that you go to the West to study, like whether that be Europe, or whether that be the US or any other place. And I got questioned a lot by my relatives, by everyone around me, my friends and everyone else, like, why China? Why are you going to China? Why are you going to China? And I think I found something, actually. Let me just pull it up on my phone. I found something which really encapsulated well. And this was my situation. And someone said perfectly, it was said that if you are split between two paths, pick the one with the better story. At the end of your life, it's all you're going to have left anyways. And I thought about it and I was like, hey, like, I know the West, I know what the US holds, I know what Canada holds, the language I know people there and everything else. But this I don't know. And because I don't know that, I know for a fact that in 10 years, like, if someone's gonna ask me, like, hey, like, what's, like, like, you sit around the table and you're like, hey, here's a fun fact about me. I spent 4 years of my life in China. And it's that better story that led me there. And it'll be your better story that'll lead you there. And it'll always be something that will carry on with the rest of your life.
I love that. I love that. Kendi, how about you?
Yeah, I think, Russell, you know my answer. It stayed the same since my interview just before getting to DKU. It's always been the same answer past 3 years. I was thinking about my major and what I wanted to do in college and maybe after college, I would say, which has drastically changed. But for me, it was more like what I wanted to study and what my interests were. I am a CS major. So to me, it was like I'm trying to pick the place that I feel like will give me the best exposure to the best technology I can get and just go in there and be surprised by everything, which happened and still happens every single day. So I would say my answer is very partial to like my academics and my plans for the future. So for me, it was I need the best technology in the world, and I need to have it for me to be like the best I feel like I could be in my passions and whatever. And also it's the fact that like I could also like go to Duke during one of my semesters. So for me, weighing my options like academically, it was wise. I get to be in two countries with the fastest growing technology in the world at the same time, get the best of both worlds. And that for me was like the biggest like changing factor. And I think surprisingly, China has given me the technology I wanted, and Duke gave me, like going to Duke, it gave me the entrepreneurial side of myself that I wanted. So I would say, looking back, I got more than I wanted to get. And I am happy that I got that because now I have a different outlook to what I wanted initially. Now I have that plus more. And I feel like I am better able to like make my academic or like future decisions based on like what I got from Duke and DKU.
Thank you, Kendi. Tekla, how about you?
For me, honestly, I'd say just the fun of it. It's, going into the unknown, which can be scary, but when will you be so young to do it again? And I'd say the more like older you get, the more like, so to say, you get like, the life of like a job, a family, and so forth, the less chances you have. I'd say generally college is the time to experiment something different. And I didn't know much about China, if anything at all, before coming. But I said, you know what? When will I be able to go again? When will I have such an opportunity presented that makes me so unique compared to, I hate to say it, but as Abdullah pointed out, the US and generally the West is a popular destination for higher education. But China, you know, people raise their eyes like, what is this? So generally speaking, that, and I'd say I've gotten this comment like very early on, before I actually came to China, where someone who I was talking to about coming to China said that, oh, currently, even in like the global sphere, China is very open. So who knows if like these opportunities would be present in as close as like 5 years. So I was like, you know what? If the opportunity is here, you better grasp it. Worst goes worst, you'll have a story to tell. So I'd say if you are thinking of it, it's definitely worth it. It's okay if you don't know everything yet, but just trust the process, so to say, and just go for the fun of it.
Well, great perspectives, you guys. I don't know if anybody here got to watch the AmCham event that we did, the American Chamber of Commerce Shanghai, which was last Sunday, I believe. And if you haven't watched it, you should go watch it because they touched on a lot of why China. But even if you never live in China, and you just come here for the adventure, but the skills you gain in an international environment, and no matter where you are in the world, no matter what you're doing, you're going to have some involvement with China down the road. So having those skills, having that experience, having the language skills, having the understanding of culture, it gives you an edge. Having the skills that you develop in an international environment, in an international community of students, it gives you an edge. And it's why our students have been doing so well once they leave DKU. So I'm just so grateful for our panelists today and for Delphin and Anastasia on the chat. And Delphin and Anastasia, if you want to kind of share your perspective in the chat, please do, while I just kind of wrap up and just say what's to come. And so, we've got many more sessions coming up. This week's sessions are focused on what we call thriving at DKU. So what are the resources in place that are going to set you up for success as a student and beyond? So tomorrow, April 7th, for many, and April 8th in the morning for others at 10 p.m. is athletics at DKU. The school spirit is very alive and well at DKU. And there's lots of ways to get involved, continue to play sports that you've been playing at various levels, some very elite, including fantastic football teams, both men's and women's, but also basketball, volleyball, and lots of other sports. Amazing athletic facilities at DKU, and students who want to cheer on their classmates. So that's happening tomorrow on the 9th, April 9th, at 9 a.m. in the morning in U.S. time. Careers and internships. So learn about the resources to help students with job and internship search strategies, graduate school preparation. And then the following day on April 10th, we have Arriving and Thriving on Campus. So it starts with getting you to China, right? And after May 1, when our class is in place, you'll start to receive guidance from the International Student Services on making that transition. But then what about what happens next when you land on campus? So learn about all the resources that ensure your success, whether it's residence life, academic advising, counseling and wellness services, and more. And then the following week, we have more sessions, including on academics and study abroad, learning Chinese, and a really cool special session that we're doing for the very first time. It's a senior student, bit of a tongue twister, a senior student panel. And in this panel, a group of seniors at DKU are going to reflect on their journeys at DKU. How did they decide their major? Talk about their signature work project and how they decided what topic to research. Talk about the extracurricular activities, the experiences they had outside the classroom that shaped their college experience, and hear about their postgraduate plans. And now this was actually one of our seniors who had the idea for this panel. And it's a student many of you may already be aware of if you've been in Discord, Semin Kim. So just another example of a student being innovative and finding a way to leave their legacy at DKU by bringing this session forward. And remember, all of these sessions will be recorded, so you can always access them on the DKU Bound webpage. But again, thank you so much, Kendi, Abdullah, Tekla, Delphin, Anastasia. Thank you all for being here. I know some of you, it's gotten very late, and to all of you attendees who were able to come live, wonderful. Thank you. I hope you learned something at the session today. And for those of you who are watching this as a recording, we hope you get inspired as well. So thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Thank you for coming, everyone. Have a good day, good night, whatever.